The history of any given NFL season usually begins and ends with the Super Bowl, specifically with the Super Bowl champion, and to a lesser degree, that game's loser. Sometimes a really great team will come up just short of the Super Bowl, and the seismic wave that creates allows that team to last a little longer in the memory. But then there are other really good or great football teams not fitting this criteria who can get lost in the shuffle. Their existence certainly isn't forgotten, but their greatness, and in some cases their potential greatness, is. Today we're going to be counting down 15 such teams of the Super Bowl era, listing them in order from lowest to highest of their C-score, a metric developed by this channel to evaluate NFL teams using criteria that stretches beyond just their records. For a deeper explanation of C-score, be sure to check out the description of this video. There are 3 qualifications to make this list. The team cannot have advanced to the Super Bowl, their C-score must be at least 20 points, and they can't be too well known, such as the 1998 Minnesota Vikings. With all that in mind, I wish to thank you for joining us today. It's now time to take a look at these teams. We'll start off with the 1983 Dallas Cowboys. A 12-4 team with a plus 119 point differential was only good enough for a second place finish in the NFC East thanks to the juggernaut that was the Washington Redskins. Dallas scored the ball better than anyone else in the league, other than the record-setting Redskins, but they weren't as good on the defensive side of the ball, finishing 20th in points allowed. They did land a top 10 schedule, and with it a C-score of 20.232. Dallas spent the 1970s making it to 5 Super Bowls, and to this point in the 80s had been to the NFC Championship game every season. So this group that only got into the playoffs as a wild card, only to lose at home to the LA Rams, is easy to overlook in the grand scheme of things. They started the season 12-2, with those 2 losses by a combined 3 points. But their last 2 games, against the Redskins and the 49ers, didn't go so well. A couple of seasons later, the Cowboys underwent quite a downturn, but this 83 team still had a lot of greatness in it. Up next is the 2008 Philadelphia Eagles. That 9-6-1 record may not look like much, and it was only good enough for second place in the NFC East behind the New York Giants. But these other numbers are astounding. 6th in points scored and 4th in points allowed, all adding up to a plus 127 point differential. They didn't have a daunting schedule, but it wasn't exactly a cakewalk either, and they nabbed a C-score of 20.433. The Eagles of the 2000s are almost exclusively known for their 4 NFC Championship game appearances between 2001 and 2004. Sometimes that 5th appearance is referenced as well. That was this team. Forced onto the road as the NFC's 6th seed, they beat the Vikings before knocking off those same Giants. The NFC title game is where it ended though. They overcame a 24-6 halftime deficit against the Arizona Cardinals before ultimately falling 32-25. It's their previous success in the decade and the wholesale change they experienced over the next few seasons that sees this season get lost in the shuffle. Let's now take a look at the New Orleans Saints from 1992. Led by the Dome Patrol, New Orleans put up a stellar 12-4 record. But like the other 2 teams we've looked at to this point, it was only good enough for a second place finish, this time in the NFC West. Their 10th place finish in scoring was impressive, but that plus 128 point differential was driven by the league's stingiest defense, leading the league in points allowed and arriving at a C-score of 20.94. The NFC, and indeed the entire NFL from 1992 to 1994, was the exclusive domain of the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers, as witnessed by their 3 battles in the NFC Championship game over that time. Any other team, no matter how good they were, would fall short to their stature, and the New Orleans Saints were no different. Not helping was their franchise's puzzling inability to ever win a playoff game, and despite playing host to the Eagles this season, they took yet another L. That Dome Patrol was something to behold though. with the entire linebacking core of Pat Swilling, Sam Mills, Vaughn Johnson, and Ricky Jackson making the Pro Bowl for the second consecutive season. We haven't found a division champion yet, as we now take a look at the AFC East's second place team in 1985, the New York Jets. Their 11th place finish and strength of schedule just missed giving them top 10 numbers across the board. At 11-5, they were 7th in points scored and 3rd in points allowed, while outscoring that top half schedule by 129 points. All told, the Jets stand tall with a C-score of 21.154. Historically speaking, the 1985 season begins and ends with the Chicago Bears, and rightfully so. They are C-Score's highest-ranked team, not just in 1985, but over the entire Super Bowl era. 1985's second highest-ranked team wasn't the New England Patriots, who lost to Chicago in the Super Bowl. And it wasn't the Miami Dolphins, AFC East champions and the only team to beat Chicago this season. It was the Jets, but their season was overshadowed by a loss to the Patriots in the wild card round, being outpaced by exactly 3 points in every single quarter. That run the Pats went on easily could have belonged to the Jets. Now we get our first division champion. In fact, we get a number 1 seed with the 2001 Pittsburgh Steelers. The last ever AFC Central Division champions went 13-3. After a Week 1 clunker, Pittsburgh's only 2 losses the rest of the season were by 3 points each. They may have only played the league's second easiest schedule, but they crushed it with a plus 140 point differential, landing them a C-score of 21.854. Under head coach Bill Cowher, the Steelers developed an unfortunate habit of losing the AFC Championship game at home, having done so twice before. Here in 2001, they completed the hat trick, losing to the New England Patriots in a strange game where they allowed 2 special teams touchdowns, including one after a penalty forced the down to be replayed. This is sort of the forgotten game of the Patriots' miracle run to the Super Bowl this season, sandwiched in between the Tuck Rule game and their massive upset of the Rams, which in turn kinda makes the greatness of this Steelers team forgotten as well. Outside of the 1990 Buffalo Bills, this is C-Score's highest rated team from the AFC during the first half of the 1990s, the 1991 Houston Oilers. The weakest part of their resume here is that 11-5 record, although that was good enough to win the AFC Central. Known almost primarily for their offense, which finished the season 4th in scoring, the defense more than did their part here, finishing 6th in points allowed, giving Houston a C-score of 21.973. Because the Buffalo Bills went to 4 straight Super Bowls, it might be hard to believe that, once again outside of that 1990 season, the Oilers scored higher in C-score than the Bills in every one of those seasons. The other problem here is that the one time these two teams met in the playoffs during this time, in 1992, Buffalo made what is still the largest comeback in NFL playoff history. The Oilers were somewhat of a mirror to the Saints. Although they were able to win a playoff game here or there, they never could get past the divisional round. And playing in freezing temperatures at Denver this season proved no different. We've referenced this team on this channel in the past, but it was necessary to place them on this list, the 1976 New England Patriots. Coming off a 3-11 record the year before, and a whole bunch of losing before that, the Pats turned things around by going 11-3 and outscoring their opponents by 140 points. They tied the Baltimore Colts atop the AFC East, but lost out on a tiebreaker, having to settle for the wild card. They landed a C-score of 22.656. These Pats got lost in the spotlight that belonged to the rivalry between the Raiders and the Steelers. Pittsburgh were the 2-time defending champions, while Oakland paced the league with a 13-1 record. That one loss, though, that was against New England, and it was by a 48-17 drubbing. Then these two teams met in the playoffs. Oakland won the game under the cloud of several different controversies, ending the Patriots' season. This itself isn't forgotten, but this team's placement here is driven by the fact that the Raiders went on to win the Super Bowl, a title that could have, and perhaps should have, belonged to New England. We step back one season to take a look at the 1975 Minnesota Vikings. Crowned as NFC Central champions once again, this group went 12-2 while outscoring their opponents by nearly 200 points. They may have played an easy schedule, in fact the easiest in the entire league, but they overcome that by finishing third in the league in both points scored and points allowed. Their C-score sits at 24.079. During a 4-year stretch between 1973 and 1976, the Vikings went to the Super Bowl 3 times. This was the one season where they didn't, causing it to get lost in the shuffle. Adding to that is the manner in which Minnesota was eliminated from the playoffs, at home in the divisional round against the Cowboys on a last-ditch deep pass for a touchdown that was christened with a name that remains to this day, the Hail Mary. But this Viking team graded out higher in C-score than both the 73 and 74 squads, and under the first season with playoff seeding, it could have been expected that they would be back in the Super Bowl once again. Let's now step back one more season to take a look at the 1974 Oakland Raiders. The league's highest scoring team led the way to an AFC West Division title, landing a 12-2 record while outscoring their opponents by 127 points. Those opponents weren't too shabby either, with the Raiders' schedule ranking 14th out of 26th, sitting right in the middle of the pack. With the help of a more than solid defense, Oakland's C-score was 24.511. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride. The Raiders lost the final 2 AFL title games, then lost the first AFC title game. One season before this, once again on the doorstep of the Super Bowl, they lost in the AFC title game again. But this was the Raiders' best post-merger team to this point, losing their 2 games by a combined 4 points. They did, however, fall once again in the AFC title game, this time to the Steelers. This was the birth of Pittsburgh's Super Bowl dynasty, and with the Raiders nabbing their own title in 1976, in between the Steeler double repeats, this 1974 squad, in all its greatness, tends to get left by the wayside. This is the most recent team we'll be looking at today. From nearly a decade on, we have the 2015 Cincinnati Bengals. The AFC North is traditionally a hard-fought division, but Cincy was 2 games clear at the top with their 12-4 record. The defense led the way, second best in fewest points allowed, but the offense was no slouch, 7th in the league in points scored. That added up to a plus 140 point differential and a C-score of 24.614. It would be a massive mistake to say that this team, in the larger sense, is forgotten. They endured arguably the biggest meltdown in NFL playoff history. While the '92 Oilers allowed Buffalo to erase a 32-point deficit over about a half of football, Cincy literally fumbled away their chance to put their game against the Steelers away before collapsing under the weight of their own immaturity, conceding back-to-back personal fouls and allowing Pittsburgh a game-winning field goal. That we know. What might not be known is that despite all of this, the Bengals still rated out as 2015's best AFC team by C-score. Yes, even better than the eventual champion Denver Broncos. Oh, what could have been. The Dallas Cowboys return, the first of 3 franchises we will be visiting twice. We take it all the way back to the beginning of the Super Bowl era with the 1966 squad. At 10-3-1, they still managed to outscore their opponents by over 200 points while leading the league in scoring. As was often the case for pre-merger Dallas, their schedule was weak, but their C-score remained excellent at 25.513. The 1967 Cowboys went to Green Bay in the playoffs and lost what is now known as the Ice Bowl. That level of infamy isn't matched by the 1966 squad, but this team outpaced that team in just about every meaningful way imaginable. Yet, they may be best known for starting the tradition of Cowboys games on Thanksgiving Day. What gets lost is that had their defense performed slightly better in the NFL title game, at home and once more against the Packers, then it could have been the Dallas Cowboys who won the first ever Super Bowl, potentially shifting NFL history with ramifications that would still be felt to this very day. 1974 is the only season to appear twice on this list. We saw the Raiders earlier, now we see the Washington Redskins. 4 teams in the NFC finished the season at 10-4, but the Redskins were the only one of the 4 relegated to a wildcard spot, losing the NFC East on a tiebreaker to the St. Louis Cardinals. But they were top 5 across the board here with a point differential of plus 124 and a C-score of 25.775. Washington lost that tiebreaker to St. Louis on account of being swept by them by a total of 10 points. As the wildcard team, they were sent on the road to Los Angeles, where their offense failed to impress against the Rams' top-ranked scoring defense, turning the ball over 6 times in a 19-10 loss. Despite this one and done, Washington's total season performance could not be undone. Not only did they ultimately grade out as C-Score's highest-rated team in the NFC, they edged out the eventual Super Bowl champion Pittsburgh Steelers to claim the crown as 1974's highest-rated team, period. Following their appearance from 1975, we now have the Minnesota Vikings from 1988. Their 11-5 record let them down slightly, placing them second in the NFC Central behind the Chicago Bears. They were otherwise stellar, landing a plus 173 point differential by placing 4th in points scored and 2nd in fewest points allowed. With all this taking place against the middle-of-the-road schedule, Minnesota lands a C-score of 26.042. The 87 team pulled off 2 massive upsets to make it to the NFC Championship game. The 89 team made the Herschel Walker trade. But sitting in between those 2 teams was this one, whose C-score was more than double the combined total of the other 2. The Vikings defense led the NFL in total yards allowed, first downs allowed, yards per play, takeaways, and passer rating allowed at a barely believable 41.2. But they lost in the divisional round to the 49ers, avenging their upset loss to Minnesota the season before. Despite this, like the 1974 Redskins before them, and with equally limited fanfare, the Vikings attained 1988's highest C-score. With only 2 teams remaining, the 1971 Baltimore Colts are now brought to the forefront. A home loss in the season's final game brought them down to a 10-4 record and a 2nd place finish in the AFC East, but they were otherwise dominant, more than doubling their opponents over the course of the season, outscoring them 313 to 140. This all catapulted the Colts to a C-score of 26.773. This Colts team fell under the shadow of themselves. For only 1 season earlier, they won Super Bowl V. That said, the 1970 team was inferior to the 1971 team in just about every aspect, excluding their final outcome, of course. Their 3 previous losses were all by 1 possession to eventual division champions. They avenged one of those losses in the playoffs when they went to Cleveland and soundly defeated the Browns, but they fell in a thud against the Dolphins in the AFC Championship game. This proved to be the last Colts playoff win for 24 years, when they were long gone from Baltimore and fully entrenched in Indianapolis. The last of our 15 teams is also the second appearance by the New Orleans Saints, this time from 2011. Possessing one of the greatest offenses of all time and a solid defense to boot, the Saints won the NFC South with a 13-3 regular season record and an amazing plus 208 point differential. Yet, they had to settle for the NFC's number 3 seed and missed out on a first round bye. That didn't hurt their C-score though, coming in at a powerful 29.123. Certainly, the Saints' playoff loss in the divisional round to the 49ers isn't forgotten. In what was arguably the most exciting playoff game in NFL history, they came back from an early deficit to take the lead, gave it up in the fourth quarter, took it right back, only to lose it again in the final seconds. With that being the legacy of this team, then yes, their greatness is truly forgotten. For the third time today, we have a team who didn't make their conference championship game to rank out as its season's highest by C-score, with New Orleans beating out every team from that Final Four and the 15-1 Green Bay Packers. Since playoff seeding began in 1975, only 4 teams with a C-score higher than the 2011 Saints failed to make it to the Super Bowl. All 4 of those teams played at home in the divisional round, coming off a bye. It's not just the absolute greatness of this Saints team that gets historically overlooked. It's also that the fates seem to have conspired against them. Thank you so much for making it to this point in the video. I truly hope you enjoyed it. Support the video and the channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Don't forget to ding that bell in order to be notified on all our future releases. Let me know what you think about all of this. Did I leave anybody out? Of course I did. There are so many more than just 15 teams that fit this criteria. Share with us in the comments section who you think is a forgotten or overlooked great team, regardless of whether you know that team's C-score or not. After all, setting a minimum of 20 was just an arbitrary cutoff. I could have just as easily set the minimum at 15, 17, or 18.134. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on the matter. I want to take the time once again to thank you for joining us today. And until next time, I hope you have an awesome day.